So this is an infinity mirror. This is a project I've wanted to do for a long time. And the concept of it is you take what I'm gonna call a one-way mirror, which is like what you'd find in your bathroom. It has a coating on the back, the other side is reflective, and you sandwich lights in between that and a two-way mirror, or what I'm gonna call a two-way mirror, which is a see-through mirror. And I don't know how well that actually picks up on camera, but this is a reflective coating that is on this that allows you to see through it. One side is more reflective than the other. Now, typically these are made from old picture frames or glass coffee tables. I'm actually making mine out of acrylic, and I have a very good reason for that. One is I want the sides of this frame to be frosted. Now, glass does come in frosted flavor, but it's gonna be difficult for me and most likely expensive to get all these little individual pieces either cut or for me to do it myself. And this was supposed to be more of a DIY approach. I also wanted this little diamond in the middle to be frosted as well to allow light to spill inside of there. So there's a couple different things going on here. If you were to use black on the sides here or wood or something, you would contain more light, and the effect would be a bit more bright than it is now. This is actually plenty bright enough for what I wanted, but it could be brighter if you were to enclose this in something that actually blocked the light from escaping. But I wanted the glow because I want this to be able to be used sort of as an accent or even a nightlight. So all told, this whole project cost about $75. I got everything on Amazon, and I will leave affiliate links in the description of this video if you guys want to check out the different things that I actually used for this build. Now, as I said, this is all made from acrylic, and you can use most woodworking tools with acrylic as long as you follow some basic guidelines. Now, I'm not gonna turn this whole video into how to work with acrylics, but if you guys do want me to put out videos on sort of the do's and don'ts of working with acrylics as well as how to bond them and everything else, let me know and I will gladly make those videos. I do have a bit of a acrylic fabrication background. As far as our parts and pieces, we need our one-way mirror, we need our two-way mirror, we need clear acrylic. This is all 1/8 inch. We're going to bond the pieces together with this clear double-sided tape. This is very thin, both this way, but also thickness-wise. And this is what we're gonna use to bond our pieces together. This is a 3mm tape. Typically, this 1/8 inch acrylic is 3mm thick. So tape like this should work absolutely perfectly. Now, in my case, I don't know if it ever picked up on camera or not, but this other piece of clear that I had is a little thinner than that. So I probably should have used a thinner tape, but this is all I had. And the other thing we're gonna need, of course, is lights. I chose to go with RGB lights because I wanted there to be some different color. And this one actually comes with a remote, which I thought was kind of neat. But because I bought this strand separate, I didn't have to do any soldering or anything like that. So this is gonna be as DIY as it gets. Now the first step, of course, is determine how big you want your frame to be. And with infinity mirrors, the distance between the back mirror and the front mirror will determine how deep the effect is in your project. So as you can see, when I put the front mirror closer to the back mirror, it gets shallower. When I pull it away, it makes sort of a deeper effect. I chose to go for 1.5 inches because I wanted there to be enough so that there's a glow on this particular project, and I wanted there to be a little bit of depth to this. You're only gonna get so many reflections, at least that's what I've noticed. The camera won't pick it up, but I have about 18 LED reflections, so that ends up being about 19 rows of lights before they finally disappear. Each time there's a reflection, it loses a little bit of light. Now, what I don't know is maybe if you ran more lights in the frame, maybe it would be brighter and you'd see the distant reflections a little bit more, but it's still only going to reflect so many times before it eventually fades, which is the look of an infinity mirror. It's infinite. Now for cutting all this acrylic, we're going to use a table saw, and we're going to use a triple chip grind tooth geometry. Is that how you say it? Tooth geometry? Anyways, you'll notice that every other tooth is flat and every other tooth in between has the corners basically knocked off of it. So this is going to give us a decent cut, and it's not going to chip out nearly as much as it would be if you used a wood blade or something. The other thing is this particular saw blade has 80 teeth. So you want more teeth and you want that triple chip grind tooth pattern. Yeah. Now, if you have a crummy table saw like me and you're cutting 1/8 inch material, 1/8 inch material can slide under the fence. If that is the case for you, it's easy to take a nice flat straight board. I'm using a piece of old hardwood flooring and use some double side tape and make a sacrificial face to the fence. Now, you should have no problem with clearance underneath there. This will provide a much safer experience at the saw. Cutting acrylic on the table saw is a little bit different than cutting plywood, but not by much. You just want to make sure that you go slow enough so that you're not tearing the material up, but you don't want to go so slow that you're producing heat and melting the material and having it fuse back together on you. Blade height stays the same, about a 1/4 inch or so above. You can raise it up in certain situations a little bit taller, just like with wood. Other than that, it cuts the same. After I had my strips cut, I would tear the plastic off. That's actually one thing I want to say real quick though, is acrylic typically comes with either a paper or a plastic protective cover on it. Keep the cover on as long as you possibly can. In the event of a one-sided mirror, this coating on the back is actually not protective at all, and the front is what's going to have the plastic film on it. This will scratch, and if you scratch it, you'll ruin your mirror. That's true for any mirror because this is a coating that's typically sprayed on, and so you don't want to scratch that up. So run it face down with that coating up, if that makes sense. Just whatever you do, just keep the plastic on the plastic at all times. Now again, after removing the protective film from the acrylic, I sanded both sides of each strip down with 220 grit sandpaper and a random orbital sander. This is going to give me the appearance of frosted, which is what I'm looking for. You can buy acrylic with the frosted effect, but this works just the same and is a little bit cheaper. Now, to determine the outside dimensions of my box, I actually used the LED strip as a guide. I wanted an equal amount of LEDs on each wall, and since we're doing a square, that means that I could just make one mark and duplicate it over and over. So when I figured out the length, I made a mark. I took another piece of 1/8 inch acrylic and just made another mark on the other side. This is gonna make more sense here in just a second. I cut those down at the table saw with the same techniques I mentioned in the first part. Now you guys might notice a little chip out right there. You can always make a cleanup pass with your table saw afterwards, just like you would do a cleanup pass with a router, and just shave a very small amount off that outside. That way the saw blade isn't actually separating two pieces. It's actually just almost like sanding down the one side, and then I'll get rid of any chips and marks that you might have got the first time around. Now this LED strip is a little different than the ones I've worked with in the past, and it has this flat little connector, so I had to notch that out on the bandsaw to have a space for my wire. You'll see what I'm talking about here in just a second. Now this is where the tape comes into play. This is a double-sided clear tape, so I'm going to pull some off the roll and tape one end of each one of these. This is actually the 4 sides to the little diamond that's inside on my project. The easiest way to cut it is with a good sharp blade, straight down right into your cutting surface, and it should come apart just fine. I can't stress sharp blade enough, because if you don't use a sharp blade, it's going to tear and gum up the tape. It's very almost like rubbery. And if you don't cut through the plastic film, the red part, all the way, it's also going to pull and tear that protective coating off of there, which means anything flying around in the air is going to get attached to your tape before you're ready to use it. To assemble, I'm going to pull the red protective strip off of the double side tape, and I'm actually going to just butt each end into the next piece, creating a square. I'm doing it this way because then all my pieces can be cut to the exact same length, and I don't have to do the subtracting and adding depending on which side is the long side and which side is the short side. Those of you that have ever made a box know what I'm talking about. Now, before I seal the whole thing up, I make sure that I put that LED strip inside. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a way of getting it in there. If you were running your own tape and soldering a cord in there and you had one of those round cords, you could just drill a hole in the side of it and you'd be fine. That's how I normally do it. This is the first LED strip I've ever had that had the flat little connector on it. Once I had that sealed up, I could go ahead and stick down my LED strip, removing a little bit of backing and then sticking them down and chasing that all the way around the frame, keeping it in the center of the frame. Now I chose to do mine on the center of the frame because I wanted symmetry. And when you look down this tunnel of sorts, I wanted the lights to be equally spaced apart, all the reflections. If you were to put the LED strip more towards the back or the front, what would happen is as the reflections repeated, it would look like 2 LED strips next to each other as opposed to one in the middle. And so you would end up with 2, a big gap, and 2 and a big gap. And I've seen those before, they look kind of cool. It's just for this, I wanted as equal lighting and symmetry as I possibly could. Once I finished installing the LEDs, I went ahead and ran more tape all around the edges of the frame on both sides, because this is where our mirrors are gonna stick to. I measured the box and cut the mirrors out on the table saw following the same rules. And because the mirrors were gonna be shown, I chose to take some 220 grit sandpaper on a block and sand down the sides so that they were smoother to the touch and they looked a little bit better and we didn't see that saw cut edge. Cleaning acrylic is a pain in the rear. I'm just gonna put that out there ahead of time. Acrylic scratches very easily, so be very careful when you're cleaning it. I'm actually not doing this the right way. I'm using a little bit of glass cleaner and a paper towel. This is actually a really easy way to scratch your acrylic, but I was in a time crunch and this is all I really had. I did have a microfiber that I would go through and sort of touch up little things here and there, and a can of compressed air that'll help keep dust out. But just be mindful that acrylic scratches very easily, so whatever you use to clean it with, be very careful. Once I had it cleaned up, I would fasten the back mirror to the back of the box and flip it over and put the diamond shape in the center of it. Now, my SD card apparently was full when I was filming this and I don't have the footage of it, but I'm pretty sure you guys can use your imagination and figure out that I put some VHB tape on the back side of that little diamond and I stuck it to that back mirror, and that's how I got that. Now again, I chose to use frosted acrylic for this because I wanted the light to pass through it for more depth and dimension. But I actually played around with a few other things, including this little plywood star, some PVC pipe, and actually a roll of blue masking tape, which all three actually look kind of cool. Once I had the back on, I could take the film off and give it a quick little cleanup, and that's it, we're done. And the only thing left to do is plug it in and see how well it works. I think it looks really cool. There's a few things that I would do a little bit different on the next one. For one thing, acrylic can be a pain in the butt, but it's cheap, it's easily accessible, and we can use it here in the shop. If you take your time and you have the patience, you can actually make some really cool things out of acrylic. I don't like the fact that it can scratch so easy. I have plans in the future on making more of these mirrors because I have a lot of really cool ideas and I learned a lot making this one. I'm gonna make one where I bend the light a few different directions so that the tunnel looks like it's curving around the corner. I can't wait to try that one. And I actually wanna try doing some scenery where I would put something, not lights, but a scene in here, and that scene, once lit, would duplicate over and over, and it would look like, sort of like you're going down a hallway. Now this came out really nice. For a DIY project, it's great. If I was to do this for a client, I would use glue and I would glue the pieces together where I could and route it off and make it a little bit more professional. Now again, like I said, you can use black on the outside, that'll hold the light in more and brighten up the inside of the frame. You could use wood, you could, I mean, you could do whatever you wanted to. The possibilities are infinite. Yeah. Anyways, I think that wraps it up for this. If you guys have any questions or if I screwed something up in my explanation, feel free to leave a comment and let me know. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching this video as always, and I will see you guys in the next video. Oh, and happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving.